a cybercriminal who stole millions, lived lavishly while flaunting his wealth, and thought he was untouchable, until his own arrogance brought it all crashing down. This is the story of Roman Seleznev. Roman Seleznev, born in 1984 in the Russian port city of Vladivostok, came into the world under modest circumstances. Life in post-Soviet Russia was far from easy, and for Roman this was especially true. After his parents' divorce, Roman lived with his mother in a small, overcrowded apartment shared with multiple families. This early environment partially fueled his later drive for wealth at any cost. Despite these challenges, Roman displayed a remarkable aptitude for computers from an early age. Whether it was working with hardware or delving into coding, his skills set him apart. Unfortunately, the origins of his talent remain unclear, as records from his early years are sparse. It is equally unclear whether Roman's fascination with technology was born from curiosity or necessity. But what is certain is that his skill would later play a critical role in his rise and his eventual fall. Roman's life took a tragic turn at the age of 17. One fateful day in 2001, he discovered his mother dead in their small apartment's bathtub, the victim of alcohol poisoning. This event marked a profound shift in Roman's trajectory. Suddenly left without parental support and thrust into a world of uncertainty, he found himself struggling to survive. Roman's descent into crime began as an act of desperation. Lacking guidance or resources, he turned to the skills that offered the quickest payoff: credit card fraud and identity theft. At first, these crimes were a means of survival, allowing him to scrape by in an unforgiving environment. However, as Roman discovered the lucrative potential of cybercrime, what began as a necessity quickly evolved into ambition. This era of Roman's life serves as a window into his psychology. Faced with tragedy and deprivation, he chose to leverage his skills not for rebuilding, but for exploitation, setting the stage for his transformation from a struggling youth to one of the world's most notorious cybercriminals. Roman Seleznev's pivot from desperation to organized cybercrime began in 2002 when he entered the shadowy world of online fraud under the pseudonym Nux. This alias would mark his onset into the burgeoning underground carding scene, where stolen credit card information was bought, sold, and exploited for profit. At just 18 years old, Roman possessed a dangerous combination of technical skill, opportunism, and a growing disregard for the consequences of his actions. Carding, as it was known, involved stealing credit card details and using them to purchase goods or convert them to cash. While some viewed this practice as a victimless crime, it wreaked havoc on individuals and businesses alike. Roman's mastery of this technique quickly set him apart from other carders in online forums. Unlike many amateurs, Roman treated his criminal activity like a business, constantly refining his methods to maximize efficiency and minimize risk. By 2005, Nux had established himself as a prominent player in the carding world. He was a fixture on forums like Card Planet, which served as marketplaces for stolen data and tools. These platforms operated much like eBay but for illicit goods, allowing Roman to sell credit card numbers, fake identities, and other stolen data to buyers across the globe. As his reputation grew, so did his earnings, and Roman began to attract the attention of law enforcement. Roman's crimes were not limited to basic credit card fraud. He expanded his repertoire to include identity theft, selling packages of stolen personal information that included names, dates of birth, and social security numbers. This diversification made him a valuable figure in the criminal underworld and a high-priority target for agencies like the United States Secret Service, which began monitoring his activities. The period of Roman's life under the Nux alias was one of experimentation and rapid growth. He honed his skills and built the foundation for what would become a cybercrime empire. Yet, even in these early days, his hubris and growing arrogance hinted at the vulnerabilities that would eventually lead to his downfall. By 2009, Roman Seleznev's activities under the Nux alias had made him a rising star in the criminal underground and a significant target for law enforcement. His involvement in the theft and sale of stolen credit card data had reached such a scale that the United States Secret Service, along with the FBI, began coordinating an investigation to identify and apprehend him. Despite the challenges of operating in cyberspace, where anonymity reigns supreme, investigators were making progress. Roman's primary weakness lay in his growing profile. His success had turned him into a key player in forums like Card Planet, where his volume of stolen data made him a standout figure. This level of activity could not go unnoticed indefinitely, and law enforcement agencies gradually pieced together a profile of the man behind Nux. Their findings eventually pointed them to Vladivostok, Russia, Roman's hometown. The Secret Service and FBI approached Russia's Federal Security Service, the FSB, for assistance in apprehending him. It seemed as though Roman's luck was running out. However, just as the investigation gained traction, Roman abruptly announced his retirement from the carding forums and deleted his accounts. For law enforcement, this move was unexpected and frustrating. For Roman, it was a calculated decision fueled by a critical piece of inside information. As it turned out, Roman had connections within the FSB, who had tipped him off about the investigation. This early warning allowed him to vanish before authorities could make their move. Roman's retreat was not just a tactical decision. It was also a signal of his arrogance. He believed that his network of allies and his understanding of cybercrime's fluid nature would allow him to evade capture indefinitely. Roman's disappearance marked the end of his Nux persona, but it was far from the end of his criminal activities. Instead of walking away from cybercrime, Roman took this opportunity to reinvent himself, adopting the alias Track 2, and laying the groundwork for an even larger and more audacious criminal enterprise. His narrow escape, however, was a harbinger of the overconfidence that would eventually lead to his undoing. Roman Seleznev's transformation into Track 2 marked a new chapter in his criminal career, one characterized by scale, ambition, and an ever-deepening reliance on the anonymity of the dark web. The name, Track 2, was itself a nod to his methods, referring to the magnetic stripe data on credit cards that he exploited with surgical precision. Unlike his earlier ventures under Nux, which involved selling stolen credit card numbers in a relatively informal manner, Track 2 became a fully operational business. Roman established and operated carding websites such as track2.name and bulba.cc, which became marketplaces for buying and selling stolen credit card data. These platforms offered a level of professionalism that set them apart from competitors, featuring 24/7 customer support and guarantees for buyers. Roman's ability to provide these services earned him a trusted reputation among cybercriminals. The scale of Roman's operations was staggering. Using malware installed on point-of-sale (POS) systems, he harvested credit card information from hundreds of businesses across the United States. Small businesses and restaurants with outdated security systems were his primary targets, as their vulnerabilities made them easy prey. The malware collected Track 1 and Track 2 data from every transaction, which Roman stored in plain text files on his servers. These dumps were then sold in bulk on his websites, generating millions of dollars in revenue. Roman's criminal empire was a model of efficiency. He streamlined operations, minimized risks, and maximized profits. However, the very characteristics that made his enterprise so successful, his high profile, vast network, and unrelenting ambition, also made him a high-profile target. Law enforcement agencies, already aware of his activities, now saw him as one of the most dangerous cybercriminals in operation. Unbeknownst to Roman, they were quietly closing in. While Roman Seleznev thrived as Track 2, law enforcement agencies across the United States were piecing together a growing puzzle. By 2010, the scale of his operations had become impossible to ignore. Data breaches linked to his malware had compromised hundreds of thousands of credit cards, leaving a trail of financial devastation. A major breakthrough occurred when an e-crime task force in Idaho uncovered a data breach at Shalotsky's Deli. Investigators found that the POS system at the restaurant had been compromised, with its customers' credit card information transmitted to a server located in Russia. This discovery marked the first concrete link between Roman's operations and a specific crime in the United States. Detective David Dunn, based in Seattle, became a key player in the investigation. By analyzing forensic evidence from Shalotsky's case, Dunn identified connections to other breaches across the country. Roman's use of centralized servers to store stolen data inadvertently created a map of his activities. Each breach added another piece to the puzzle, revealing the breadth of Roman's criminal enterprise. One particularly revealing moment came when investigators identified his two websites, track2.name and bulba.cc, used to store and sell stolen credit card data. By tracking communications between these sites and known cybercriminals, Dunn and his team were able to confirm that the same individual was behind both platforms. Roman's use of a consistent modus operandi, targeting poorly secured POS systems and storing data in plain text, made it easier for investigators to connect the dots. Despite these advancements, Roman's location in Russia posed a significant challenge. With no extradition treaty between the U.S. and Russia, law enforcement could only watch as Roman continued to expand his empire. For years, their efforts remained in the shadows, patiently building a case that could bring him to justice. As his empire grew, so did his arrogance, a trait that laid the groundwork for his eventual downfall. While many cybercriminals operate under the radar, Roman flaunted his wealth and success. Roman's lavish lifestyle was well documented. He posted photos of private jets, tropical vacations, and muscle cars, showcasing a life of luxury funded entirely by fraud. These displays were not merely indulgent, but emblematic of his growing hubris. Roman believed that his technical skills and insider connections, particularly within the Russian FSB, made him immune to law enforcement efforts. However, this overconfidence led to glaring lapses in operational security. Roman reused passwords across multiple accounts, including those associated with his carding websites. Investigators later discovered that he often registered domains using his real name and address, a shocking oversight for someone operating at his level. One of Roman's most critical errors came when he used a personal email account to book travel arrangements. This account contained detailed information, including passport numbers and travel itineraries, which provided investigators with crucial insights into his movements. These breadcrumbs, left out of carelessness or sheer arrogance, proved instrumental in building the case against him. Roman's belief in his own untouchability also extended to his business practices. By offering guarantees and customer support on his carding sites, he attracted more buyers and more attention. His efforts to professionalize cybercrime only made him a larger target for law enforcement, which saw him as a substantial pillar in the global carding ecosystem. In the end, Roman's hubris was his undoing. His visible displays of wealth, combined with his sloppy operational habits, gave investigators the tools they needed to bring him down. While his technical skills were formidable, his arrogance blinded him to the simple precautions that might have kept him safe. Roman Seleznev's years of evading capture came to an abrupt end in the summer of 2014, thanks to a combination of investigative persistence and an anonymous tip. By this point, Roman's cybercrime empire had cost businesses and financial institutions millions of dollars. Despite his carelessness, he remained beyond the reach of U.S. law enforcement due to his residence in Russia, a country unwilling to extradite its citizens. However, this geographical shield failed when Roman ventured beyond Russian borders. In July 2014, U.S. authorities received intelligence that Roman would be vacationing in the Maldives, a tropical destination known for its luxury resorts. Unlike Russia, the Maldives had extradition agreements that would allow Roman to be detained and handed over to American law enforcement. Acting quickly, the Secret Service launched a high-stakes operation to capture him. The sting operation required coordination between multiple agencies, including the Department of Justice, the Secret Service, and local authorities in the Maldives. On July 5, 2014, Roman arrived at the Malé International Airport after a lavish holiday. He was prepared to board a private jet bound for Russia. Secret Service agents intercepted him. Roman was promptly taken into custody and extradited to Guam, a U.S. territory, where he would face federal charges. The operation marked a significant victory for U.S. law enforcement and sent shockwaves through the cybercriminal world. For years, Roman had operated with impunity, confident that his Russian residency would shield him from consequences. His arrest in the Maldives shattered this illusion, proving that even the most elusive criminals could be reached. For Roman, the Maldives sting operation was the beginning of the end. It brought him face to face with the legal repercussions of his actions and ended his decade-long career as one of the world's most notorious cybercriminals. For law enforcement, it was a triumph of persistence and ingenuity, showcasing the potential of international collaboration in the fight against cybercrime. Following his extradition to Guam and subsequent transfer to Washington State, Roman Seleznev faced an array of charges in federal court. The U.S. government accused him of orchestrating a massive cybercrime operation that defrauded businesses and financial institutions of tens of millions of dollars. The trial would expose the full extent of his criminal enterprise and the devastating impact it had on its victims. Central to the prosecution's case was the trove of evidence recovered from Roman's laptop, which had been seized during his arrest. Investigators found 1.7 million stolen credit card numbers, along with detailed records of transactions conducted through his carding websites. These files provided a comprehensive picture of Roman's operations, from the methods he used to obtain the data to the profits he reaped from selling it. What made the evidence particularly damning was Roman's negligence in securing it. Despite being a seasoned cybercriminal, he failed to encrypt his files or use robust passwords. One of his most commonly used passwords, Ochiko123, was easily guessed by investigators, granting them access to his entire operation. The laptop also contained emails, chat logs, and even personal purchases, tying Roman directly to the crimes. The trial highlighted the human cost of Roman's actions. Victims testified about the financial and emotional toll of identity theft, describing how their lives were upended by his schemes. Small businesses that had been targeted, like the Broadway Grill in Seattle, shared stories of financial ruin, with some forced to close permanently. Roman's defense attempted to cast doubt on the authenticity of the evidence, suggesting it had been tampered with during the investigation. However, forensic experts refuted these claims, demonstrating that the data had been accessed and used before his arrest. In August of 2016, after a brief but overwhelming presentation of evidence, Roman was convicted on 38 counts, including wire fraud, bank fraud, and identity theft. The trial was a watershed moment in the fight against cybercrime, showcasing the devastating consequences of these acts and the relentless pursuit of justice. In August 2016, Roman Seleznev stood before a federal court in Washington state, awaiting sentencing for the crimes that had defined his adult life. Roman faced one of the harshest punishments ever handed down for cybercrime in the United States. The court's decision would not only mark the end of Roman's criminal career, but also send a powerful message to the global cybercrime community. The judge sentenced Roman to 27 years in federal prison, a term that reflected the extraordinary scale of his crimes. Over the course of more than a decade, Roman's operations had caused over $169 million in damages to businesses and financial institutions. His malware attacks on point-of-sale systems had compromised millions of credit card accounts, leaving countless individuals and small businesses in financial ruin. The courtroom was filled with emotional testimonies from victims, many of whom described the devastating impact of Roman's actions. Small business owners recounted how the financial losses from data breaches ruined their operations or completely shut them down, while individual victims spoke of the long, arduous process of rebuilding their credit and reclaiming their identities. The judge emphasized that Roman's greed and disregard for the consequences of his actions warranted the severe sentence. Roman's defense team attempted to label the punishment as excessive, arguing that it amounted to a death sentence given his health issues. They highlighted injuries Roman sustained in a 2011 terrorist bombing in Morocco, which left him with permanent physical and psychological scars. Despite these arguments, the court remained unsympathetic, noting that Roman had repeatedly chosen to exploit others for personal gain, even after surviving a near-death experience. For Roman, the sentence marked a dramatic fall from the heights of his criminal empire. For the victims and law enforcement officials who had pursued him for years, it was a long-awaited moment of accountability. Roman's case set a precedent for the prosecution of cybercriminals, demonstrating that even those who operate in the shadows of the internet are not beyond the reach of justice. Roman Seleznev's story is a striking example of the dual-edged nature of technology. On one hand, it enabled him to build a global criminal enterprise, exploiting vulnerabilities in digital systems to amass immense wealth. On the other, it provided law enforcement with the tools to track his movements, gather evidence, and ultimately bring him to justice. The scale and sophistication of Roman's operations demonstrate the evolving threat of cybercrime. His ability to target small businesses with outdated security measures exposed systemic weaknesses in financial and technological infrastructures. These vulnerabilities extended beyond his immediate victims, as the stolen data often ended up in the hands of other criminals, fueling further fraud and identity theft. Roman's arrest and conviction were significant victories for law enforcement, but they also underscored the challenges of combating cybercrime. The decentralized and anonymous nature of the internet allows criminals to operate across borders, often evading detection for years. Roman's case was exceptional in its resolution, thanks to international cooperation and the meticulous work of investigators like Detective David Dunn. However, Roman's legacy is not limited to his crimes. His story serves as both a cautionary tale and a call to action. It showcases the importance of cybersecurity measures, not only for businesses, but also for individuals who must remain vigilant in protecting their personal information. It also underscores the need for continued innovation in law enforcement. As cybercriminals adopt increasingly sophisticated tactics, today, Roman remains behind bars, a far cry from the lavish lifestyle he once flaunted. While his empire has crumbled, the lessons of his rise and fall endure. His story is a reminder that even in the digital age, greed and arrogance are no match for persistence, collaboration, and the pursuit of justice. What are your thoughts on this case and the history of Roman Seleznev? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to see more videos like this, exposing the dark realities of the world's most intriguing fraud and scam cases, hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you never miss an exciting episode.